Welcome to episode 28 of the FoodGrads Podcast, the podcast where we explore careers in the food, beverage, and hospitality industries. I'm your host, Veronica Hislop, a molecular science graduate student and career partner with FoodGrads. This week on the podcast, I interviewed Rachel Odolski, a flavorist in training at the Prinova Group. Prinova is a leading supplier of ingredients and premix manufacturing for the food, beverage, and nutrition industries. In this episode, Rachel took me on a journey into the world of flavors. Rachel is in training to become a fully certified flavorist, so she was able to explain what the examination process looks like and how she's training for these exams. She talked about her daily duties at her job and how she approaches creating a flavor when a client comes to them at Prinova. She also took the time to explain to me the science behind flavors and what exactly they are and the tools that are used in the trade. I knew I had to connect with Rachel once I saw her Flavor Fact Friday on LinkedIn, a series where Rachel shares bits and pieces of her training, including notes of various raw materials evaluated as part of her sensory training, fun facts, and general information. She hopes that the wonderful world of flavors can come and join together and they can help one another. So make sure to check that out after the episode because there is so much good information out there. It was so fun geeking out with Rachel about flavors. She has this bubbly personality which is so contagious and you just can't help but get excited about flavors. Hopefully after this conversation you get just as pumped as I am about this topic because it is a pretty awesome career path. So enough with that introduction, let's go on to the show. Hi Rachel, thank you for coming on the show. We came across each other when you started posting some really awesome posts on LinkedIn about your kind of journey going from becoming a full-fledged flavorist. So I was excited to reach out and get you to share your journey because it sounds like you're really vocal in this type of area, and I think that more people need to know about how cool what you're doing is.
I would agree.
So I guess we'll just get started into that, and we'll round about and talk about what you've been doing on LinkedIn. But I think for those who are listening, I think it's better for us to know what you're doing, and maybe you can take us on a journey of how you got here.
All right. I am a flavorist in training. I am currently 3.5 years in to my 7-year certification process. I went to school for nursing and then ended up graduating with a biology degree because I was so full-fledged ready to be in the flavor industry. Right before I graduated, I had done an internship at the company I'm at now, which is Prinova. By the second day, I had fallen in love, and I had called my supervisor at school saying, what do I need to do to graduate right away?
Oh my gosh.
It was a match made in heaven. I don't know.
You got this internship, you're excited to graduate. Tell me about what it is about Prinova USA, what they do, and what kind of made you fall in love there.
Absolutely. So Prinova technically started as an ingredient distribution company called Premium Ingredients, and then after a few acquisitions, they changed their name to Prinova, and currently they not only distribute ingredients, but they create premixes. They make flavors, which is what I do. And then we also have a aroma division, which they sell essential oils and aroma chemicals. So we have a lot of capabilities at Prinova, and that gives us an opportunity to work with a bunch of different clients and customers and just getting good exposure within the industry. It's just a well-rounded and interesting little mix we have there. So I fell in love with the culture. Obviously, our lab environment's very open. Everybody is a collaborative group, and it reminded me a lot of playing like team sports, especially everybody relies on each other to get everything done, and you truly like lean on your teammates here. And I absolutely loved that environment and couldn't be there and as successful without them.
Very nice. And originally starting off as a distributor, with the products that you sell now, is it just pure like flavor oils and such, or do you have like pre-made puree batches, or is there a whole line of products?
So what do you mean, like for the ingredients?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I know we think when people add like vanilla extract to their baking, there's like that liquid form, but I know that some companies also do provide like, not only are they a flavor house, but they also do, if they were doing a strawberry, like a yogurt, you could get the strawberry puree kind of thing from the place as well.
We aren't that into the raw material side of things. We don't have very many inclusion options, but we do have juice powders. I think that's the closest to that we do have.
Okay. So in terms of your internship, you were in nursing. Did you find the internship randomly? Was it posted on your job board at school? How did that come to be?
So technically, I went to school for nursing, and then changed my degree as a hopeful pre-med halfway through school because I had nursing was not meant for me. And then as we got closer to graduation, I had looked into some internships and just around where I live, and my uncle works at a different flavor company around the area. So I had known about the industry, so I was like, okay, I'll apply to this internship. It looks super awesome. And then as I had done research, preparing myself for this interview and just the whole process of learning about flavors and flavor chemists, I was like probably the most enthusiastic little seed sitting in the interview chair for 2 hours.
Wow. Well, it makes sense. I mean, for them to take a chance on you, it just goes to show that enthusiasm really will take you far in terms of getting these new opportunities, because clearly they liked you if you're now in training right now. So
yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so cool. Like, again, it just goes to show that, the food industry and how it can find different people, and you don't have to necessarily be siphoned into like doing the one thing forever. And I guess it did help because you were kind of bound at the time for medical, that you did have that science background, which to my understanding is very important in flavor creation.
Absolutely. And the semester before I had done my internship, I had finished my organic chemistry, and we had learned about isoamyl acetate because we synthesized it in the lab, and I was like, this smells like banana. And it was so funny that like I had landed in that internship like exactly after that, and it was just perfect.
Oh yeah, I remember one of the things that I loved back in high school was that we had, I can't even remember the compounds now. You think I'd remember graduating from a chemistry degree, but when we were making like it smelled like bananas, pineapple, there's that compound group they smell very similar, and they're only different you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but I can't for the life of me remember. And just doing
I'm assuming like the ethyl caproate.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you. And then we did that same project in university, and I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever. How is like something like a liquid smell like a banana? Like, it's just fascinating.
Yes.
So I know that I'm like kind of geeking out here, but for those who might not be as familiar with, like, I feel like I'm taking it back, and I want to kind of learn about the science in sense of like when we talk about flavors and like being a flavorist, what exactly does a flavor company do? I guess let's take the question there. How does a flavor company work that they can create just this like liquid mixture that all of a sudden has a flavor?
As we kind of gone over like on my LinkedIn posts and whatnot, that everything that we consume, much like we are broken down into cells and even further like molecular atoms, the flavors are the same way. What we taste can be broken down into like a chemical construct. So if you have ever taken an essential oil and have run it through a GCMS, which I can cover a little more later, it is broken down through the GCMS into individual chemical structures at different varying levels. So that is what we perceive as flavor. And obviously we use a little bit of our smell, our taste, temperature, touch. All of this plays a factor in how we perceive flavor. And together as like flavor chemists, we are able to use like our certain materials that we have in the lab. So like if you ever think of like a lime sherbet and a lime margarita, those are two different type of a lime oil that you could use. Just as a flavor chemist, you have to know the difference when you need to use one and when you need to use the other. So we have a bunch of natural and synthetic materials available to us to recreate these shelf-stable flavors so we can put into various types of products.
Wow, that's so cool. Like, I mean, you think of a lime's a lime, but, there's different varieties of limes. So it only makes sense that there's different combinations and compounds that can be a lime.
Yeah.
That's cool. And okay, so where do I want to take that? Well, I guess, you know what? I want to go in the direction of, you mentioned GCMS. I'm pretty sure you're talking about a gas chromatography, mass spectroscopy. Am I remember the acronym?
Mass spectrometer.
Whoops. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. So tell me, as a flavor chemist, let's walk through, let's go with lime, because you mentioned lime. If we wanted to make a lime margarita flavoring for like a beverage, let's just say, and I'm a customer who comes to you, how does that process even happen? Or how would you start creating this?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we need to get a lot of background information about the customer. We need to know what declaration they're going for. Are they going for artificial? Are they going for natural and artificial? Are they going for natural? Do they need the natural with other natural flavors, meaning does it need to contain the lime itself? Or are we able to use other ingredients to kind of replicate a lime profile? Does it need to be organic? That's another process. And then countries that the flavor is going to be sold into. Various countries have various different rules. Our regulatory team does a great job of kind of overseeing the different rules for all of the various countries. So just having that background information is good on the forehand. As we formulate our flavor, we know we have to abide by those rules and whatnot. Another important thing is shelf space. So here in the U.S., we have a place called Trader Joe's and Whole Foods. These have very strict lists that you need to abide by in order to have your products on the shelf. So all of this information is kind of gathered up front, and then after that, we kind of have to figure out what is this going into as well. So we have to figure out the flavor form. So does it need to be a liquid? Is it going into any water-soluble applications? Does it need to be an oil? Is it going into a tincture? Or does it need to be dry? Is this going to be something someone takes a scoop of and then mixes with water? So all of these things are very important and can set us up for starting our margarita flavor.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to consider before you even start to even consider the compounds that you're using. It's just even, but I guess it would make sense that you would need to know about the solubility and all those types of things.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so with that, so let's just say we're going to be creating just a open the can beverage drink, something like that. I guess that would take into consideration, again, that solubility, like the compounds would have to be maybe water soluble. Actually, that makes me ask, I'm thinking with flavor compounds, are most of them water soluble? Are there ones that are oil soluble? I don't know.
Absolutely. They are almost all oil soluble.
Oh, okay.
So it's all going to be, and then since you said RTD, the other question that we would also have to ask is, does this product need to be water white, which is a fancy term for clear? And then, or can it have, is it going to be a little cloudy? Is it going to have some juice concentrates in there that's contributing to some clouds, so we don't have to have that cut water white?
Wow. Okay. So when creating flavors, again, we're going back to that GCMS. Are there any so let's try to understand what, for the people who don't know, what exactly is that, and what are some of the other tools, or if there are any, that you would use, again, going for our margarita beverage?
Absolutely. So the GCMS is a tool that we use very consistently in the lab. What it does is it breaks down whatever we put in, so it can be a mixture of a finished flavor, or it could be essential oils, or it can be even finished products. Obviously, when inserting anything into the GCMS, you have to go through some processing, and in order for it to break down everything correctly. Our senior analytical chemist is probably the best that I will ever come across, and I'd love to test that, but she's very good at what she does. So she has her full extraction method that she does before putting anything through the GCMS, because the GCMS does not handle seeds very well. Yes. So what happens is that you put your sample into the inlet, and it goes through a column, and a column is a very, very long hollow coil that is within the GC. It's the GC portion there. So there's a gas inlet that kind of pushes the sample through this column. And obviously, as you've seen racing, there's going to be some separation happening between the cars. So the aroma chemicals are the cars here, and the factor cars, which are typically the lighter cars, are going to go through the column a little faster. And then the heavier ones are going to go through a little slower. So the GC is separating these compounds, and then it goes through an ionization chamber, and then there's a mass analyzer, and then the MS portion detects and then analyzes the data. So this will essentially break down our sample and then give us a general quantity of what of these ingredients are in there.
Okay. I can just visualize it personally. I have used it on multiple occasions, never for flavor stuff. I mean, I think that would be such a cool thing to do in the lab at school, as the labs that we do in like physical chemistry. We use it for, like, I think one of the labs was caffeine analysis, I think, like the amounts. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But again, so cool how it's being applied to flavors, because essentially they're just chemical compounds.
Exactly. And anything you break down, it's small enough, whether it's a blade of grass or a human cell, it all breaks down into the little chemical compounds here.
It's crazy. And I guess that's one of the reasons why there's so many different avenues for creating a flavor, because I guess, sorry, my head's going a mile a minute because I'm already thinking of the next thing. Because one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show was to talk about that you are a junior flavorist. And I know that is because you're in the process of becoming a certified flavor chemist. And I have heard that this is a process that takes longer than becoming a doctor. I don't know how true that is, so maybe you could answer that. But so can you tell me what a certified flavor chemist is, and what exactly how the process happens to go from deciding you want to be one?
Absolutely. So a certified flavor chemist is someone that has gone through 7 years of training. They've passed a test at 5 years and passed a test at 7 years. So to get considered to be a flavorist or a flavorist trainee, you have to get your degree at a university, and then with that degree, you get a job within a flavor company. I am very, very lucky that my internship led to a job opportunity. It's not always that way. Sometimes you have to get yourself into a job, and it could be a lab tech, it could be a compounder, it can be in quality, anything to get in and getting familiar with the materials, getting familiar with the lexicon and all of the complications that go into creating flavors. So then once you're accepted as a trainee, you go with your mentor, and the mentor is just going to be, guiding you along this process, because it's not a classroom, it's not a university, there's not textbooks, it's a lot of hands-on learning here. So your mentor is going to guide you through the process, teach you what you need to know, and kind of push you to learn a little more in some of the areas that you might not be so familiar with. So you go through, and your 5 year comes along, take your first test, and the test is comprised of a written, verbal, and a sensory portion. So you take your written test, and then after your written test, there's a verbal portion, so they can have you kind of explain what you had written and then ask you further questions. And then there's also a sensory portion where they give you materials and you have to identify them. So you do that at your 5 year, and then you do it again at your 7 year. obviously your 7-year test, the one that certifies you, is going to be a little difficult, and they're gonna hold you to higher standards.
Okay. Wow. So it sounds like it's really comprehensive, and I guess is it an association around the world, or is it different countries have their own?
So different countries have their own sort of certification kind of process. Some don't even have certifications. They're just recognized by time in the industry. So the U.S. has Society of Flavor Chemists. I believe Britain has the British Society of Flavorists. And that, I know they're very active on like LinkedIn and whatnot. They post a lot of great articles. And then I'm not too sure about other countries, but I know others like in India have added me on LinkedIn, and they do have flavors there. So it's always interesting. I also had a flavorist reach out or added me on LinkedIn from Australia, which I was like, oh, they make flavors there? Like, it should be common knowledge, but it just baffles me that there's so many places around the world that make flavors.
Oh, I know. Our food system's huge, and you feel like the center of the universe wherever you are. Like, it's the only place, but there's certifications and so much knowledge that you just don't even realize is out there.
Yes.
So one of the things that I know that you are, so I'm assuming that you are in progress right now for the 5-year certificate. I don't know. I knew that you're a trainee. I'm sorry if I'm judging it. So it's basically you're getting set up to study and prepare for the examination. That's the tasting and walk me through where you are at this point in the journey.
No worries. So I am 3.5 years into the certification process. So in about a year and a half, I'll take my 5-year exam, which will make me an apprentice flavorist. I wish it had a better, title than apprentice, but I'll take it.
Hey, I think it's pretty cool. To me, an apprentice really does sound like someone who's like head down really into like they've decided this is what they want to do, because it takes time to really learn a lot. And I can imagine to make a flavor. You said lexicon. I'm pretty that's like a book that like breaks down all the different compounds.
It's kind of the terminology that you use to describe things. So within our lab, we have tastings of various like raw materials, whatever's new, or just things that we can find other uses for. Like we taste a lot of essential oils because at various levels, you can use them for various things, and you can even find a home in things that you wouldn't expect it in. So something like Davana oil is found in a lot of like berry flavors. It's very versatile. You can use it pretty much in anything, and just finding the right level for it, you can stick it in there. But the lexicon is kind of like a vocab that we can use. I call it flavor language. And so you can communicate with your coworkers, you can communicate with other food science professionals, and kind of be on the same page when it comes to very fine-tuned flavor variances.
Oh, okay. So in the past, I had written some articles on investigating different flavors. And one of the things that really stood out to me was the fact that there, like you said, there's a flavor language, and being able to identify like this is astringent, this is grassy. How has that process been to learn these? Because to me, it seems like such a subjective thing. So how, as a flavorist, do you take this subjectiveness and really turn it into something that's more tangible?
Absolutely. So having those tastings as a group obviously help. And then seeing flavors, and this is why it's such a long process, but seeing more and more flavors, you can see what sort of contributes to giving a flavor that juicy compound or that juicy note in a flavor, or what's making it very fresh, what's making it seedy. Because as you make flavors over and over, you can taste them and you'll see, hey, this strawberry is really jammy. I see it has a little bit more brown and cooked compounds. Maybe that's what's causing this. And so you just see all of these varying flavors and kind of see what contributes to what sort of profile. And that's actually a part of the flavorist test, is being able to call out what causes that ripe flavor and whatever fruit or whatever food they call out.
Hold on. So you're saying that there are like, it's not just texture that's responsible for like jammy, like flavors and juicy? Because like to me, those are textural type things, not flavors.
Absolutely. So it's always going to be an aroma compound kind of balance. So like if you cook a strawberry, there are reactions happening as you're cooking that strawberry, and those reactions also correlate into that new aroma chemical profile that strawberry now has.
Oh my God. Okay, so my mind's blown right now. I honestly thought it was just all like, I know that there's the reactions that happen when you do cooking and all that, but like I didn't realize that there is some parts of it responsible as the compounds and not just texture. So
Absolutely.
oh wow. Okay, so that's really cool. I guess under your training right now, you said that you're not quite an apprentice just yet, you're a trainee, but can you walk me through how your day-to-day work looks like at your job? I know, for example, today you're working from home, but I know it would also change from the day-to-day, but can you just talk about in general type of the tasks that you perform as you're in training? And I was also curious, I guess this could differ between companies, but as someone who's in training, are you kind of one to have like the final say on something going out of the door, or does it always have to go through your mentor?
Absolutely. So that's definitely going to be something that varies company to company. I am lucky enough to have been working on projects with the guidance and then now on my own, but that's not always the case. And just being at a smaller flavor company, you have to like put on your hat and kind of work through it, ask the questions as you struggle. But my day to day, I normally come into the lab, have to have my coffee. That's must. And you would think at a flavor company we'd have good coffee, like we make flavors, but no. So I normally pick up my coffee before I come in. After that, I'll kind of sit down, look at my project load, kind of measure around the due date, see what I need to get accomplished. I'll check to see if any flavors had come back from being processed on like the spray dryer or back in production, and kind of like evaluate those and see how they're going. There I can make adjustments to the ones I'm working on and then further work on the new projects that I have coming in. And if one of the flavors is good to go, then I have to get it ready for the process of being reviewed before we send it out. So although I'm working on these projects mostly on my own right now, I do have to send off my flavors to be reviewed by someone that's a little more senior than I am.
Okay.
So there is a check process in place, and obviously they review it, they make sure it's good. If they need to ask any questions, or if they see I might have missed something that's listed on the project that they don't see in my flavor, then we can make some adjustments that way. And then after that, it gets sent over. Regulatory makes their check, and we get all of the documents that we need to send that flavor out. And pretty much my whole day is just a revolving circle with a few distractions by my wonderful lab mates, because you can't go without that. And, there's equal amounts of paperwork, meetings, proactive, initiatives that we have within the company that we have to go over and make sure that we aren't working just on like the reactive projects and getting stuff out the door for customers, but we're also looking ahead and working on those new trends or some new innovation. It's always a different day, but it's exciting because it's never the same flavor that walks into the door.
I can tell, and it sounds like you have a good combination of being in the lab, but then also having stuff outside. It sounds like it's a lot of project management. So one of the things I was also curious about is that you're creating different combinations, and I was curious if how much like cost plays a role in terms of creating flavors. And then this is my next question, because I know cost would be associated where something comes from, but like where do flavor compounds actually come from that you're making, and are there differences in costs between them?
Absolutely. So a lot of like the raw materials that we use, they're extracted from natural sources or synthesized if they're artificial, so they'll be synthesized. nowadays we do mostly natural flavors just because that's where everything is kind of trending. So a lot of those natural flavors are made with like very natural ingredients, and the cost is obviously going to vary based on how it is like how easy it is to synthesize or extract, or I'm not into the chemical creation kind
Gotcha.
of thing, but
Mhm.
it's a varying cost for everything. But at the end of the day, we do have some flavors that a general flavor price guideline that we like to stick by. That way we kind of price it and have it be reasonable for our customers, because nobody wants to spend an arm and a leg for a flavor.
Of course. I know, of course, for most of manufacturers, if you can get it as cheap as they can, but as natural and like hitting all the check marks, that's kind of the end game for a lot of people.
Exactly. And a lot of the times, like, we can even say, like, hey, this isn't going to be possible at the price point you're looking at, and we can do this though. So
Mm.
it's all working within the customer's budget and making sure that we can also provide a really great tasting flavor too.
Oh yeah. I can imagine that it would be so cool just to work with a client and then seeing them, happy at the end with that you see at the market, oh, that's the product that I know that we designed the flavor for. Like that's so cool.
Yes. Oh, so last weekend it was Independence Day weekend here, we had gone up and I had found one of my products on the shelf, and I was just in like beaming with excitement, and we picked up quite a few at the store we were at, just so I can keep one on the shelf and kind of keep it forever, like, oh, I did this once.
Oh, that is such a cool feeling. I can imagine like, oh, it sounds like you have such a cool job. And I mean, I know we've probably already touched upon it, but I want to know just firsthand, like, what do you love about your job?
I Oh my gosh, it's so hard to limit just a few things, but I I love the environment. I love just having a different kind of day. I'm not sitting at my computer all day, although there might be days where I need to get some work done. I'm on my feet using my skills and my sensory, like it's very hands-on, and just interacting with everyone within the lab. It's just such a great environment, and trying to think of myself doing something else and being under that stress, like if I make a crappy flavor in the lab and I completely butchered my numbers and it tastes like butt, nobody's hurt. No one's gonna die. It's just a failed trial, and then you go back to the drawing board, you learn from your mistakes, and then you move on. Like it's such a great way to learn and just to live, like, okay, if I do mess up this one thing, it's not going to be the end of the world. We don't have to send it out. Like, I can just work through it and learn from it.
I like that. And I can imagine too, being in a type of R&D process, it's like inevitable that you're going to go through like I know some places go through like hundreds of like different combinations just to get to the one. So having a job that you're right, and someone's not going to die. I mean, maybe that's a low bar to be trying to reach, but at the same time, it does sound like your workplace is a good environment to really cultivate and like just go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having my coworkers there kind of guiding me along the way, because I'm not a super taster. It's not true. You don't have to be a super taster to be a flavorist. You just have to know how to take some feedback from everybody. So I might be able to pick up some certain vanilla notes a little easier than my other coworkers, but my other coworkers could pick up maybe like seedy or like astringent notes a little more. And just knowing which of what I need to adjust to my formula based on their comments, it can really help us out, because everybody's sensitivities are different, and you just have to accept and kind of relay that information into your flavors.
Oh, that's another cool thing I never even thought about. Yeah, different people have different like tolerances to different flavors and all that, and hence why we have different preferences. So it's cool that you're like, again, you got that team environment, like you said at the beginning of our chat, with who you work with.
Hmm.
as well. One of the things that you mentioned that you're not a super taster, but then at the same time, besides using your nose and your mouth in terms of tasting, what are some of the skills that you use? Like, what are some of the skills that are important to your everyday job?
Yeah, so obviously smelling, tasting, working well in a team environment, that's also very important. Other like physical skills is definitely you're going to need to be a little strong. There are some containers that are a little heavier. Just having the physical skill to work a pipette and just, precisely weigh out ingredients, that's definitely something that you need to practice and get good at. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
It's good that you point that out because I'm imagining that on a scale, in terms of flavor testing, you use very, very small amounts of things.
Yes, absolutely.
It's amazing how small the amounts of something are. Like, I know that if you're at a manufacturing plant, you just like pour out the jug out, but then like doing a trial on the scale that you use, maybe like doing a small trial within like taste testing within your group, I could imagine it would be very, very small amounts.
Absolutely. Flavors aren't typically used at very high levels too, so you just really need a small little sample in order to taste and test it out in application.
Mm. And if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the reasons why we are able to safely consume flavors, right? Because isn't there like a threshold for when something is deemed like not safe, but because we consume it at like such small levels that we really don't have to worry about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So in like certain instances, we're consuming them at lower than it would be in a finished, like in a strawberry, let's say. Those aroma compounds that we're using, they're normally lower than what would be in a finished good.
Okay. Okay. So it does make sense because I know that I would imagine that you're well aware of this, but there's definitely been a lot of talk in terms of like safety and, you know, there was that big shift away from synthetic flavors, even though a lot of them were safe anywhere for consumption, but a lot of people prefer the natural, which I totally understand. So it's just interesting how, again, we're working with chemicals, but then at the size and just all that type of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thoroughly enjoy the challenge of making natural flavors and being able to use like ingredients like Savannah oil to kind of replicate a natural product by using some essential oils, which everybody seems to love right now too.
That is true. But it's cool that and I love the attitude that you're taking as well, that, it's a challenge. And it does sound like your job is really it's really mentally stimulating. You get to be that master kind of like mixing everything together and figuring out what the customer likes. I can imagine it's very mentally stimulating.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a key word, what the customer likes. Like,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure there's been a few times where I'm like, this flavor is fantastic. Why don't they like it? But it's really pleasing the customer, and then ultimately the end goal is the consumer. So just creating a profile that, most people, not everyone's going to love it, most people like is critical, and just, you can make a pretty great flavor, but everyone's got to like it.
That's true. Yes, I think that we forget that. Especially, I remember when I was doing a co-op and I was in R&D, and I was like, "This flavor, hands down, best one." And then they're like, "No, let's go with this one." And I'm like, "But why not?"
Yes, we have very, very fine-tuned palates in R&D, so sometimes we have to take that step back and really think about it as like a mass consumer. What are they expecting, and what kind of flavor profile are they looking forward to?
Mhm. Well, that makes sense. And one of the things that I forgot to actually ask earlier, which would have been beneficial when we were talking about your training program, but I know that you've been studying for your exams, and of course, I know you've been sharing a lot of this knowledge on LinkedIn, which I'm going to be linking some of the posts because you have to check them out. They're really cool to learn about, but I wanted to know how you've been actually studying for the exams besides just going into work.
Absolutely. So a lot of the hands-on learning that I get to go through at work, seeing flavors every day, kind of just going and tasting different profiles, looking into those formulas and seeing what they used and whatnot, and having that library of previous formulas and formulas that are being created kind of just helps build that knowledge of everything. And spending some time in production, seeing how those operations work, seeing how the scale up happens, that's all very important. A lot of reading articles on various different websites. I think Perfumer and Flavourist is the one I had originally started as an intern, just like logging in every morning and reading that until I got my things to do for the day. Just kind of staying on top of the industry. Other things that I'm doing are like we have our tasting sessions every week, and we taste various materials at different levels. That helps develop an understanding of everything. Smelling everything, even though you might know what it smells like, just kind of reiterating it in your brain, making sure that memory happens, and just, staying on top of regulatory stuff. Flavor labeling is like a whole section on the Society of Flavor Chemists syllabus. So just knowing what the FDA, the USDA, the TTB, various standards of identity, FEMA, all of that, that's not something that just comes to you in a project. No. It's stuff that you have to like go out and research and kind of learn about. So it's a lot of, self-motivated learning. I know some flavor industries have certain flavorist and training programs that they kind of guide you through it. But here, it's definitely self-motivated learning, kind of bouncing information off of each other and like learning together. So you find something out, you learn something, sharing it with the group, making sure everybody's on the same page, because if everybody's on the same page, we can only get better from there.
That sounds so cool. Oh, sounds so cool what you're doing. I mean, it's getting to study, but in an application way, because it's not university courses anymore. This is your self-motivation, like you said. So of course that's going to drive you even further. And seeing that tangible, applicable taste, you don't really get that with things that aren't food.
Exactly. But yeah, I love the environment. I love doing what I do, and just, having that self-drive has always been something that I've learned playing sports. You're not going to get better at a skill unless you practice it. So it's something that we take seriously, because we do have like a physical type of skill that we're learning here.
That makes sense. And I guess this is the perfect time to ask, for anyone who's listening, what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue a similar career path to what you're taking right now?
Get into a lab. Get into a lab as soon as you can and be involved. Offer your help. Go outside of your job description and kind of take a hold of your own knowledge. A mentor has to choose you to train you. So building that relationship with them and showing your passion that, you're going to take your training by the reins and kind of go with it and do what you need to do to make it happen. Not only is that less work for your mentor, but it's more rewarding when you work at it yourself.
Awesome. Well, I think that's great advice. So anyone who's listening, if you want to do this, get in a lab. It's definitely a lot of science, you'll see. But thanks so much, Rachel, for coming on the show. Before I let you head out, I just wanted to know, if people wanted to find you and see some of your amazing LinkedIn posts, where can we find you?
Absolutely. So I am the only Rachel Odolski in the world. So go ahead and Google me. You might find my Instagram page, but there's no flavors there. I would go to my LinkedIn post, and I like to post various things, just kind of covering the aspects of flavors. A lot of these things are on the syllabus. I use the syllabus as a good study guide, and I'm able to communicate that with people. I kind of bring down the level of my posts so that everybody can understand, because food should not be complicated. It should be very easy to digest and understand.
Perfect. And again, I can't say enough, everyone, that you have to go check out these posts. I think that it's hard to find information like that for a more general audience. I mean, like you said, you can go look it up in the books and that, but having something that's readily accessible, Rachel's been doing like a really good job at that. So I'll make sure to share that in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on the show. This hour flew by, and I have been mind blown for the fact that jammy flavors are flavors and not textures.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's awesome.
That was episode 28 of the FoodGrads Podcast. All the notes to this podcast can be found on the FoodGrads blog or by clicking on the Student Grads tab on the homepage. There you can find any notes to past or future episodes. Do you know anyone you would like me to interview on the show? Perhaps yourself, or a specific career path you would like me to explore? Then reach out and let me know. You can email me at veronica@foodgrads.com or any of the FoodGrads social media channels. Hope to hear from you. As a chemistry graduate, I was especially loving this conversation with Rachel. It's funny, during my time at Ryerson, it never really was promoted to become a flavorist, despite the program being perfectly suited for someone to start this type of career. After all the tools that we kind of learned in our weekly labs in the chemistry, like the mass spectroscopy, I learned how to do that. So I hope that with this conversation that all the chemists out there, biology, all those people in the STEM fields, many of you could have the skills to get and go into this awesome, really cool career. And from my conversations with Rachel outside this podcast, they are looking for people. So maybe you should consider doing this career path. It's just so amazing that the molecules that are just out there that you see on the paper, that they are associated with a flavor. And they have taste in your mouth. Chemistry is just so cool. Anyways, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and I will see you next time.